Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk for a minute about what the tribulation is going to be like, or is like, maybe, that the Bible describes. The reason I have talked about this a lot recently, is because it's tremendously important in what you think about the last days. Actually, one's view of tribulation, so to speak, kind of impacts the way they see everything else. The timing of the Antichrist, the timing of Second Thessalonians' great delusion, the return of Christ, or for some, a secret pre-trib rapture. All this stuff the fate of Israel. So many things tie together in this. And I want to say, for a very, very long time, I believed a lot of false things about, well, the Bible in general, but especially the last days. Every single person growing up, more or less, I'm going to say about 80 to 90%, maybe even more, of professed believers that grow up today in the United States in this era have been steeped. Yes, you, I was, everyone, just about everybody has been steeped like a tea bag in a certain eschatological, that is, study the last things, last days, eschatological mindset and theology. And basically, the short of it kind of is it all centers around how you view Israel, and the way you view modern day Israel kind of determines everything else. But one of the things I believed for a long time, like most people still do today, is that at the very end there's going to be these period of years of great tribulation where basically it's going to be scorched earth everywhere you look, wars everywhere, missiles and bombs being dropped, and people dying, and the worst persecution on Christians you could ever dream of, and everything else, all over, just globally. And that basically Jesus was going to come back, and we would be taken away secretly, raptured away before that time period took place. And that 7 year period is a time when he's really dealing with the modern Jewish people, and Christians are gone. And this whole thing, which I'm going to say the term, but no, saying a term about anybody doesn't make the argument wrong. But this does encompass what is at stake. It is called dispensationalism. That's what it's called. And simply me saying that doesn't make it wrong, but that's what it is. And this is called the dispensationalist view, and there's a lot of facets to it. But I used to think this way, that, hey, at the end, it's going to be hell on earth, ultimate persecution, a time like it's never existed on the face of the earth. And this is where Mark of the Beast is going to come in. We're going to get lined up. We're going to get rounded up, executed if we don't get this mark physically, literally on your right hand or your forehead. And there's going to be 7 years, more or less, of this going on. But by the way, Christians actually won't even be here for that because we'll be raptured away. I used to believe the whole thing. And I'm going to tell you right now, there are so many intricacies, so much confusion about all of this. Just more confusion about last day's events than pretty much anything you can imagine. So, years ago, I started just seeing what the Bible says about these things. There are two ways to study the Bible. You can do what's called exegesis, which means to draw out from the text, let the Bible speak for itself. Or you can do what's called eisegesis, which means you're reading into the text what you think it means or what you want it to mean. Most Christians today, because of that steeping, we do eisegesis. We read into the text what we already believe and find justification for it. I have encountered countless people, and on this channel even, when it comes to the rapture. I've talked about this many times. I'll do it more and more. There is no, according to the Bible, secret pre-tribulational rapture where Christians are taken away. There isn't one of those. What it is a bunch of texts that talk about Jesus' second coming. And what people do is they take those and they split them apart and they say, that's second coming, that's secret rapture. That's the second coming, and that's the secret rapture. When really they're just about the second coming. There's one return of Christ. The Bible is so clear about that. If you're not reading into the text what you want to think or what you've been taught. It's literally just what we have to do, especially with the last days. You have to go into things with a blank slate as much as you can. I would say with anything, because honestly, when I really started viewing the Bible those years ago with a blank slate, saying, you know what, I'm just going to take what I've learned in school, in graduate school, and everywhere else, and I'm going to employ that, but I'm going to let the Bible speak for itself and then draw all my conclusions. I'm going to wash away everything. It's an unlearning process, basically. I'm washing away everything I've been told for the most part, and I'm just going to see what it says. And I'm telling you right now, when I did that, a wave blew over me, a burst of fresh air blew over me because I saw, oh my gosh, almost everything that's commonly taught today is just doesn't align with the Bible. It's made up. And that's what even caused me to write one of the books that I have. It's called Missing Verses, 15 Beliefs the Bible Doesn't Teach. Because there's so many beliefs that people have that the Bible doesn't teach. And there's 15 in there, and they're I think pretty powerful ones. If you want to check it out, it's on Amazon. But the point is, I had to go through an unlearning process. You need to have a fresh look where you don't just take anybody's word just because they said it, not mine or anybody. Take the good, leave the bad, weigh it out, measure it, but most importantly, see what the Bible just plainly says. Let me give you a great example of this. The time of tribulation. Like I told you how it's normally taught. It looks like Terminator 2 Judgment Day, if you've ever seen that movie. Absolute hell on earth is what people often think. It's what I used to think. But you know, the Bible, the New Testament specifically, only really talks about tribulation a couple of times. Jesus does once, and basically Paul does once. They don't tell you the exact severity. They don't tell you how long it will last. In fact, the topic of 7 years or any number of years never comes up at all. And I want to return to that at the very end. But they talk about it and just say, yeah, at the end, toward the end, close to Jesus' return, there will be this time of tribulation. And yeah, there'll be some physical carnage. There'll be wars and rumors of wars. There'll be some bloodshed. There'll be things like that. But also, there have been things like that for a long, long time. Like the 20th century was the bloodiest century of all time combined. Like it's more deaths due to war than all other centuries combined by most statistics. That's a time of tribulation, if you ask me. It may not look like rockets firing all over the earth and fire everywhere you look and people being rounded up all over the place, but as great tribulation physically. And there still is today. There are many countries, guys, where if you go and told them that, the way we live and how easy it really has been, or that, Christians are going to be taken away and raptured before anything bad happens, any tribulation, while they're getting murdered, because that does happen. Right now as we speak, there are many countries where this happens. Go tell them, oh, you're not going to be here when that happens. Easy to say, isn't it? When you're not there. So these things have been going on. It's just that it wasn't supposed to be globally, everywhere you look, all over the earth. But Jesus talked about, so my point is this. If you wipe the slate clean, there are two places this is really discussed. And let's just keep it simple. Rather than jumping to Revelation every time, which people do, and it's very metaphorical, it's very mysterious, it's enigmatic, it's a great book, it's intended, it's truth all over, front to back, but highly enigmatic, very metaphorical, the most debated book in all of the Bible, to be honest with you. Let's not start there. Let's start basic, simple, something we can easily digest. Guess what? In Matthew 24 and the parallels in the Synoptic Gospels, so Matthew, Mark, and Luke, those three are very similar. They're called Synoptic Gospels. They're seen together as being one unit. In Matthew 24, Jesus is asked, what's it going to be like before you come back? He's asked about the fall of the temple in Jerusalem, and he's also asked about the end, his return. And he does talk to us. He tells us exactly what it's going to be like before he comes back. What if we just started there? Why do we have to go to these deeper enigmatic? Let's just start and say, gee, Jesus was asked this. What did he say? And I'm not going to read the whole text because I've done it before, many times, recently even. But he says the days before his return will be like the days of Noah. And he's specific about what that means. He says, in the days before the flood, people were eating and drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day Noah entered the ark. And they were unaware until the flood came and swept them away. So he doesn't just say days of Noah, he tells you specifically what about it. And what he describes is it looks like, to most of the world, life is normal. Yeah, there's wars, there's tribulation in the physical sense, there's wars, there's death, there's carnage, there's good, there's bad, there's highs, there's lows. But most people will kind of just be going on like it's any other time. Again, this is how Jesus described the days immediately preceding his return. Now, that is a very clear teaching. You don't have to do a bunch of mental gymnastics. You don't have to start piecing together some timeline of Daniel's 70 weeks. Again, I'm going to get to that a little bit for a minute at the end. You have to piece together this timeline of how many weeks elapsed, and what about the last 7 years, and what about the bowls of wrath, and what is all this symbolism? Well, it's not symbolism, it's literal to many. What does all this mean? Just listen. Jesus told us what it's going to look like. Very plainly. Days of Noah, spiritual carnage. That was a very spiritually corrupt time, extremely, to the point where God had to eradicate all human beings from the earth, except for Noah's family. So what would we expect? Severe spiritual carnage. We have that, check. B, an unexpected time, because he says later on, it'll be like a thief. They weren't expecting this. And he says that people will also be, third, living as though it's just life is normal. It looks normal. Because let's face it, having wars going on and people dying in different parts of the world and pestilence, these things have become normal to us. They're happening, but they're very normalized because it's what happens in the world. Even as it is ramped up, it's still kind of, we just expect it. That's very plain. That's a very plain. Let's start there at a base level. So whenever you're thinking, what's the end of the world going to look like? Jesus told us days of Noah. It looks very normal to most people. It is highly spiritually corrupt, and it'll come like a thief unexpectedly. I think we're right there for a million reasons. But Paul addressed this as well in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. And because he's talking about the last days, or literally the day of the Lord. And that was very well understood. He says, for you yourselves are fully aware that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. Day of the Lord was the second coming. No debate about it. That's what it meant. Jesus' triumphant return to earth. And he says, for starters, the day of the Lord will be like a thief. Well, that's what Jesus told us when he was asked, unexpectedly, like a thief. Paul says, the day before, the day when the Lord returns, it'll be unexpected, like a thief in the night. Very basic. This isn't complicated, is it? It only gets complicated when you go to other places and start tinkering around and you don't have a foundation. And he goes on, though, in 1 Thessalonians, and he says, while people are saying there is peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them as labor pains come upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. But you are not in darkness, brothers, for that day for that day to surprise you like a thief. Did you notice what he said? Notice that last part. You are not in darkness, brothers, for that day to surprise you like a thief. We'll be here. We're going to be here at the second coming. We're not going to have been raptured away. We're not going to escape whatever tribulation looks like. That he just said it. Because he wouldn't tell us it won't surprise you if we were already gone. He'd just say, you won't be here anyway. No, he says we'll be here, but we won't be surprised because we walk in the day, in the light. But goes back and says, everyone will be saying peace and security. That sounds just exactly like what Jesus said. Well, they're going to be eating and drinking and marrying. It looks good to me. It looks fine. Paul says people will be saying peace and safety. Jesus says then suddenly destruction comes upon them like the flood did to Noah. Paul says sudden destruction will come upon them like labor pains on a pregnant woman. These two accounts are perfectly consistent. They are both talking about what the world is going to look like prior to Jesus' return. Why don't we have these texts as a baseline? Why don't you ever hear anyone preach about this? Instead, they want to give you this big scroll with a drawn-out explanation of where we are in the end process. And you have this big timeline of we're right here, pre-rapture, then rapture happens, then 7-year tribulation, and then millennial reign, and then he comes, and it's like all over the place. Slow down. Jesus and Paul, in reality, the two most authoritative voices in the New Testament, because one, it's the Lord, and two, it's Paul who wrote about half the New Testament and was the apostle to the Gentiles. They directly told us what to expect. They did not say the days directly preceding the end would be hell on earth, scorched earth, fire everywhere, explosions, people running for their lives, being lined up in 2 rows to get this mark of the beast. John talked about the mark of the beast, but the mark of the beast wasn't physical. Go back on other channels. I'm not going to go into it. The mark of the beast is highly symbolic. It meant to have the laws of the devil ingrained into your mind and carry them out through the work of your hands. That's what it meant. And you could do it back then and you do it right now. Jesus and Paul said, no, looks kind of like life is normal. People are marrying and giving in marriage. They're saying peace and safety. We're fine. And then, boom, the flood comes. Or boom, the labor pains come. The giving birth comes, actually. So, I think, why not start there? Because if we actually use these two things, when, again, Jesus and Paul were deliberately asked what we should expect, and they told us right here. It gets no clearer. What if we started here and made this our foundation? Okay, what do I expect at the end? I expect it to be a very, very perverse time, like the days of Noah, but I expect it to look like, to many people, most people, life is normal. Now, if you know the Lord, you understand how corrupt it is. You understand where we're heading. But most people are just going to look like life is normal. And then, boom, it comes upon them. And it's like a thief in the night. Be prepared. What if we started there? Then we went and started reevaluating everything else. Now let's keep that as our core, and then let's go to Revelation. Then let's go to some of the parts of Daniel. And I study those parts myself. I've written about them. But that's not my foundation. They are more difficult things to understand. And this is why people start twisting themselves in knots, because they don't start here with things like this. They start with the most complicated things. So before I get off here, I mentioned, well, how did we get to this place where the last days, you're going to have this period of scorched earth tribulation and then mark of the beast and 7 years. And the simplest way I can say this is dispensationalism. That's what happened. It had to find a way to explain how the Jewish nation was going to become a nation again, how God was going to deal with the ethnic Jewish people, even though he already talked about this, I have a million times. All Israel is now all who are in Christ. There's no difference between Jew or Gentile. It's very clear. Only those in Christ are saved. There's no distinction, but they need there to be a distinction. They need there to be a distinction, and they still need this ethnic Israel thing to exist. So they looked at Daniel's prophecy of 70 weeks, and it's this is highly debated too. What do you know? Highly debated. But short of it is there's 490 total years, weeks of years. It turns out to 490 years, most of which all occurred, 483 years of it in the Old Testament. And then Jesus comes. And since the Jews rejected him, they had this remainder 7 weeks left, or 7 years left. Well, what do we do with it? Well, instead of just seeing that 7 years was fulfilled in the life of Jesus, they said, no, God hit the pause button with 7 years left because the Jews didn't accept him. So God was kind of shocked by this, and he hit pause, and then he allowed all these years for the time of the Gentiles, and he postponed the 7 years. Then at the end of the world, what's going to happen is then the Gentiles will be raptured away, they'll be taken away. Then he can deal the last 7 years with Israel. And then that will be the time, there'll be a time of great tribulation. At that point, it's going to be 7 years of it. And that's when you're going to get the mark of the beast and the Antichrist and all. And they twisted themselves in all these knots and this pretzel so that basically they can have an ethnic Israel that is still God's people with all who are in Christ who are also God's people. And you might think, why would you want to do that? Short of it is this, because it's a satanic counterfeit. That is a satanic counterfeit of a belief. And look what it's done. It's changed the way people view modern Israel, salvation, tribulation, the last days. It's changed the way they view everything. Your view of modern Israel actually changes your view of everything in the end times. So it was a way Satan got in. And by now, probably 90+% of people believe this. And I used to believe parts of it. But that's what it is. Just like, and it's proof of the lie, modern Israel's emblem, national emblem, is a satanic symbol. It's the Star of Remphan. That's not even debatable. That's what it is. Go look it up. So, guys, the point of all this is keep it basic, at least to start. Let's go with what is clear instead of what's not clear. Why are we doing this parsing of 7 years that remain off of original 490, and then you have to have this period of 7 year tribulation, and then, well, how do you get the Gentiles out of the way, and what do you do with these bowls of wrath? And Jesus and Paul both addressed what the end will look like. Let's start there. And they said, yeah, there's tribulation. Not going to say how long, not even going to say how severe, but plenty of physical stuff that will happen and is happening. But it's going to be a very spiritually corrupt time. People are going to think it looks like life is normal. The end will come upon people suddenly. We believers will still be here, but we'll be expecting it because we have eyes to see. And right now you can see this is going on. And it will come upon people like a thief. So that's my spiel for right now, guys, on what is tribulation. Well, if you understand the words of Jesus and Paul, you can understand that this time of tribulation isn't what it's normally taught to be. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Come at you with another one soon. Until then, God bless.